The Buddha gave us teachings that were based on his exploration of truth through his own mind and experience and practice. Toward the end of his life, when people asked him, "When you die, what are we going to do? Who are we going to rely on? You have been the teacher of truth for us for so many years." And the Buddha said the same thing he said at the beginning of his enlightenment. Do not believe anything anyone says, even if they claim to be enlightened. And even if it's what your religion or culture told you to believe, or even if someone with authority says it is true, don't believe it until you have tested it for yourself. Then you can believe it, based on your own experience and practice and investigation of the truth. So basically he said, you have what you need to rely on. Your own ability to investigate and study and practice the truth for yourself. This is what he meant when he said, be a lamp unto yourselves. Be your own lamp. Because the truth is already within you. It just requires a little dusting. A little dust has settled around your beautiful light bulb. But the light is still there within. So what the Buddha taught was his own experience. And if we investigate the same things he investigated, we may find that he was right. We also may find that we may have a different angle of understanding relevant for our modern times. We may find we may have an understanding that has a little bit more nuance or detail based on the evolution of humanity and modern science and psychology. So I'm going to present 4 different teachings tonight, but from a different angle than I have taught before. And sometime during this series of 12 essential teachings of the Buddha, I may go back and talk about the 4 Noble Truths and the different parts. And this teaching is contained in that, but I may give the traditional teaching later. But tonight I wanted to give you a different angle on 4 different teachings that I've recently been meditating on. And so they're not going to necessarily be what the Buddha actually said or taught, but it's based on my own experience and insight, so sort of a different angle on these teachings. So I'm going to talk tonight about suffering, impermanence, not self, and nirvana or peace. And I meditate on what order I wanted to do this in, and this is the order I wanted to teach it. So I'd like to take these traditional teachings and apply them in a more practical way, experiential way for us to use in our meditation practice and in our everyday life practice. So think of these as 4 different glasses or microscopes or telescopes, however you want to think of it. 4 different lenses through which we can become clearer in our understanding of truth for ourselves. So the first teaching on suffering is basically, after you've practiced with just concentration and being present meditation, then you can move on to insight meditation, investigating reality, right? But I highly recommend, if you're new to meditation, keep practicing the concentration aspects of meditation, just feeling the breath, coming back to the present, because you need to exercise those meditation muscles until they're strong, because it's difficult to arrive at deep insight without that deep mindfulness and concentration developed. So, but once you've practiced and developed that, then you can take that to the next step, which is, because see, meditation isn't just to make you peaceful. That's not the point, although it does have that wonderful byproduct from time to time, when your leg doesn't fall asleep or when your neighbor isn't coughing or whatever. But anyway, you learn how to just accept things, and you come into a place of peace. But the reason why we cultivate the peace is not just to have the peace. It's so that we can go deeper into our investigation of truth by having a mind that is more concentrated and more mindful, and a strong mind that is able to deeply be present to reality. Then we can penetrate the truth of reality. So I'd like for us to practice toward having an insight into our suffering. So basically, look at everything that's happening this week. Every moment. See what is the suffering. See what is the dissatisfaction. See what is the discontent. And find those places or moments or thoughts or feelings or reactions that where you're feeling that discontent or that dissatisfaction or that suffering or that unease. And then, instead of doing our usual thing of, ooh, go away, get away from me, I don't want this, just mindfully use it as a lens to look at what are you doing that's feeding that suffering. To see what part you are playing in creating that unease or that discontent. And if you can look deeply, then you start seeing this causes suffering, this causes suffering, this causes suffering. You know, even though your motivation was you wanted pleasure or something pleasant, and yet it's causing suffering. In certain aspects, it may be causing suffering or unease or discontent. So if you can see that more deeply, it becomes easier to let go of those causes of suffering. Why is that? Because you already are enlightened in your true nature. That's why when you finally see the truth about something, then the transformation just automatically happens. When you see that when you do this, you cause suffering, when you really see it deeply and truly, there's something in you that just automatically lets go of that cause of suffering. But the problem is we don't see it clearly. We might intellectually have an idea sometimes, yeah, that's not so good for me, but emotionally, psychologically, subconsciously, we're still clinging to those causes of suffering. So through meditation and mindful living in everyday life, we can start seeing the truth of suffering and how we cause so much of our own suffering. And then we can start letting go as we see the truth, and we can let go of those causes. Just a very simple example. I really love Brahms peppermint ice cream a lot. And, when I lived in California, they didn't have Brahms. And then I went to, and then for a short time I lived in Minnesota. They didn't have Brahms. When I moved back to Texas, first thing I did was go to Brahms, get peppermint ice cream. But over the last few years, I noticed that sometimes, if I was not being very mindful, I would just get a whole gallon of Brahms and watch a movie and just eat the whole thing. And I didn't realize I was eating the whole thing because I was watching the movie, and I felt so sick afterwards. And actually, I did this about 2 or 3 times before I saw the truth of this cause of suffering. And now, from time to time, I still have, this desire to have Brahms ice cream, but I'll just get a cone of Brahms ice cream, and I won't get a whole gallon thing, because I know myself. If I get the whole gallon, I'll just eat the whole thing. But so now I know I gotta let go of that desire. I enjoy the Brahms ice cream, peppermint ice cream, but I no longer. The craving isn't so strong anymore because now I realize, well, it's nice, but it's not everything to me. It's not necessarily bringing me bliss and happiness. And I don't have to have it all the time. And so now I might go maybe once every 3 months or something to Brahms, but it's no longer this strong craving anymore. Because I realize the truth that it's not a source of great happiness. It's pleasant in small doses, but it's not a source of great happiness. Maybe subconsciously I thought of it as a source of great happiness. Why? I grew up in Texas, and Brahms was one of the things that I enjoyed growing up, and so I associated it psychologically to comfort, family, old times, being a child, right? And I still, in another example, I still smile whenever I hear an ice cream truck, with the music. It reminds me, it kind of brings me back to some pleasant memories, but now I know better. If I eat a whole bunch of that, I'm going to feel really sick. So I was able to let go of that craving. Because now I see why I have that feeling of craving, and I don't need it anymore. So now, as we continue our practice, we can also look at the issue of impermanence. And there are many different angles on this teaching, but I'm just going to give you one angle tonight, which is to see the things, the people, the situations that we cling to and crave to possess that actually aren't everlasting. We put so much energy and time and effort into things that aren't even permanent. Now, of course, we have to take care of things, but can we do it with less attachment, knowing that things are impermanent? When you buy your new car, you just love it, and you want to clean it and keep everything clean inside. You put so much time and effort into maintaining it, perhaps. But what will it look like 100 years from now? Or your house? Or this center? And that doesn't mean that we don't take care of things. We do it without attachment, without clinging. And we also investigate how much time and energy are we spending on things that are fleeting, and time and energy on those things that are longer lasting. One example that I'm just coming up in my mind right now is last year, as I was starting to experience some of the early stages of my midlife crisis. I'm almost 43 now, and And I didn't realize it was a real thing. I just thought it was just a joke, but it's really, or at least for me, it was quite real. Started to, want to move or get a new car or get a new apartment or, someone younger, in my life, whatever. Things like that. And I started to want to hang out with younger people. And there were, a few people that I started trying to be friends with last year, and I realized I just don't really like this. I mean, I can't relate to anything they are interested in, and they're constantly on their cell phones and texting, and it's just a different culture, And but part of me felt, I can still be young and cool and hip and everything. But at least for these particular persons, I didn't really feel spiritually nourished being around them, and I was thinking to myself, gosh, all you want to do is go to the mall, or just things that I just don't have any interest in. And they don't even want to come to the meditation center. I keep inviting them; they don't want to do that. So, and then I realized, gosh, with the time I'm spending with them, I could be doing other things that are of a much more lasting importance. And when I investigated that, I thought, when I saw that, it was very easy to just, I'm glad I met you guys, but bye. And of course they didn't care, because they're always changing and friends and going off and doing their own thing. So now I'm trying to be more mindful of who am I spending time with, and is this going to be of a much more lasting import? And so, who am I spending time with, and what am I doing with the second half of my life? And these are questions, all of us should meditate on, whether we're at midlife or before or after. And so, what am I doing with the second half of my life? What am I spending time on? And what am I doing, what is going to be more of a more positive, lasting impact in the world? And since things are changing and impermanent, can I spend more time on the things that are of a more lasting impermanence rather than things that are just of a very temporary, fleeting impermanence? Because everything's impermanent, even the good, longer lasting things. But let's focus on things that will have a much greater impact in the world. And the third teaching on not self, I'm going to call it not self instead of non-self, because I'm going to give it a slight different twist here. So I'm not talking about some metaphysical concept or anything like that of what is the self or whatever. I'm just talking about what is not yourself. As far as our thoughts and our feelings and our stories and our judgments and our interpretations and our labels. That's to really investigate. Is your clothing yourself? Are your possessions yourself? Start looking at how much importance you put on those things that are not even your true self. And how much time and effort you put into that. And there's nothing wrong with taking care of your appearance. There's nothing wrong with that. I do that every day. When I shower and shave and comb my hair, put on clothes. It's nice. But when I think about how many minutes every day I do that, it adds up. A lot of time. So it's not about not taking care of these things, but to start realizing these are not myself. I am not my appearance. I'm not my clothing. I'm not the designer labels I wear. I'm not the car I drive. I'm not my job. That's a big one, right? I'm not my job. So you start to take away all your psychological, emotional, and spiritual energy from these labels and definitions that have become, instead of becoming useful to you, now they're becoming a trap to you. So start letting go of attachment to those things, so that you can spend more time and energy on what's really important. One enlightened teacher once said that the only reason why you're here, the only reason, is to be enlightened. That's it. Everything else is secondary, or sometimes a false goal. So when we investigate that, because enlightenment is simply to realize your true self. That's your real career too. To realize your true self and then to be that in the world. To realize the light that you are and to shine that in the world. That's your really only purpose here. And so if you're spending a lot of time and energy on certain relationships that aren't really serving the world, or on certain habits that are not serving the world, like, I don't know.
Facebook.
Huh?
Facebook.
Yes, that can be. Some people have allowed the internet and Facebook and other things to be a little bit more than necessary. See, what I'm teaching tonight is not absolute truth. It's just a method of investigation, because you still have to find the truth for yourself. So then, the fourth teaching is on nirvana. And I'm not going to talk about, ultimate nirvana or anything like that. I'm just going to talk about investigating, okay, whatever situation you're in, what is the nirvana here? What is the truth here? What is the lesson here? What is the jewel here? What is the wisdom here? So if you're going through a difficult situation, or if you're in a situation that you don't really like being in, or something like that, or when you remember the past and certain things that were very negative for you, and you wonder why that happened, instead of going into a place of anger or regret or hatred, see if you can just simply rest in the wisdom, the lesson that is there for you. Try to see everything from the lens of, what jewel can I take from this experience? So as you go through this next week, look at everything through these four lenses. What is the suffering, and how am I causing it? And look at how much time you spend on the impermanent versus that which is of a more longer lasting importance. And also see how you identify yourself with things and other, and relationships and jobs and other things, rather than relating to your true self. And also, fourthly, in everything that's happening, keep asking yourself the question, okay, what is the wisdom here? What is the lesson here? What is the truth here? What is the jewel in this situation? And that way it will help us not to fall into despair or feel completely overwhelmed by any situation, however negative it may be, to find the jewel in it. So don't focus so much on the overwhelm, but focus on finding the jewel in it. So anyway, that's just my little teaching for tonight on these 4 topics. It's definitely not exhaustive, and and there is another way of teaching it from the traditional point of view, which I'll do in a few weeks or months. But I just wanted to share 4 different lenses to look at our experience. So that's your homework for this week, because this is not absolute truth. It's just pointers for you to investigate the truth. So see if you can find some insight in your meditation and life experience this week, looking at everything from these 4 lenses, angles. Okay. Thank you.